The recording you can start later, Dr. Rupam. Once participant.
Yeah. I just paused it.
Yeah.
Right. Very good afternoon to everybody for joining this session. If you're back in your country, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining. It's a great pleasure to host this webinar because this is very important for all of us as well as our students to help them to understand many of this particular topic of qualitative research results and discussion writing. It has been a lot of queries and questions that how our own alumnus can actually share about how they have finished their qualitative research and their managed to finish their PhD in the graduated time. So our it's a great pleasure to introduce to our speaker for today, Dr. Benjamin, who is currently a lecturer in the hospitality and tourism management at the Department of Human Resource and Organization Development at the School of Business in Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He has been an excellent student for our PhD during his PhD study. He has shown a great initiative on doing research, not only finishing on time, but also published 2 articles in Scopus Index as well as SSCI Index Journal. So he has shown a great initiative in doing research as well as has been shown the excellent PhD students' capabilities. He has a wide range of research interests, including social media, travel behavior, technology adaptation, and also hospitality, travel motivation and travel decision making, and also consumer behavior in tourism. Other active areas of research, he has included fourth industrial revolution as hospitality, corporate social responsibility issues in hospitality, and also tourism and sustainable performance in hospitality industry. He's also published articles in reputed journals, and he has been a wonderful student during his PhD, and he has graduated on time. That is a great round of applause for him. Thank you, Dr. Benjamin, for joining us. And thank you for sharing your session on qualitative research results and discussion writing. We will take the student questions at the end for you so that you can continue your session. So over to you. I'll stop sharing here. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Rupam, for this nice introduction. Yes, I think we still have a lot to learn. So I would say I'm still learning. And then I also want to say a very thank you to Prof. Kandapan, my supervisor, who also groomed me to become who I am now. With his good advice and direction and everything, now I can also call myself a doctor. Yes, and share this session with you. So I want to say I'm very grateful for this opportunity. And it's always good to be back. Taylor's during my time there helped a lot, with all these sections. I remember there was a lot of online sessions we used to do, and then all these have paid off today. Currently, I'm even out of the country. I'm not even in Ghana. I'm in Spain on a teaching mobility program. And everywhere I go, I stand proud as a Taylorian, just pushing the name of Taylor's far because of what I had in Taylor. So I must say I'm very, very grateful. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. I wouldn't want to waste much time. And today's section is going to be on qualitative results and discussion writing. Qualitative results and discussion writing. And when Prof. Kandapan sent me the invite, I was like, okay, then I will try and make it more practical so that I believe you don't want me to bore you with a lot of talks with qualitative research, the phenomenology, whatever, but to go into its practical ways. Like you collected a lot of qualitative data, qualitative interview. How are you going to work with the qualitative data you have obtained so that you'll be able to finish on time? I'm proud to say that I started in 2018 and then I was able to finish by November 2020 and also publish 2 papers. So it's an honor. And then if you follow these tips, let me say you already have been to qualitative class, but if you follow these tips, it is going to help you for you to finish with your results and discussion, especially with the chapter 4 of your thesis. This is going to be very good for those who are also doing qualitative research. Also, those who want to publish one day in qualitative studies, these tips might help you as well. All right, so let me set my timer so that I don't go much. All right, so at the end of the session, you're going to be able to understand what qualitative research is and what are some of the tools that you're going to use. Also, students will be able to summarize the results under themes. I'm going to dwell much on the thematic analysis, all right? Then we will also look into how to align your findings and then how practical example. I'll show you practical examples of writing the discussion section, and some approaches that I use that I think it's very beneficial for you. And then how to also underpin some theories in your qualitative study. All right, so this is going to be the outline of my presentation. So what then, let's just refresh our minds on what qualitative research is all about. Now, qualitative research involves collecting and analyzing non-numerical data, unlike the quantitative study that helps you to, do in numbers, collect data, do the chi-square and all of that, check the differences and the means. With qualitative research, what it does is that it helps you to understand people's concepts, their opinions, their lived experiences, and their intentions, all right? And qualitative research answer questions on the how, the whys, the what. For instance, how does, let's say, materialism influence religiosity, okay? Or some what questions. What are the factors that influence people's intentions towards a particular product? Or why? Or why does females, have the ability to withstand pain than males? All right. So for you to gather in-depth knowledge and insight, it is better to go in for qualitative research so that you get a lot of information about a particular phenomenon you want to study. All right. Also, it helps you to gain better understanding about your participants' lived experiences, their intentions, as I said. And then this is a common practice that is very used in the humanities and social science, of which the hospitality and tourism program belongs. Okay. So what are some of the approaches to qualitative study? We have what we call the grounded theory. It's one of the approaches or the paradigms, right? And here it helps you to look into a topic of interest that has not been much studied on that. And then whilst you look at it and you gather a lot of responses and a lot of data, it helps you at the end of the day to develop theories, from this particular information that you have gathered. And also we have ethnography, where you go and immerse or live with your participants and then understand their way of life, and then you write something about it. We also have what we call the action research, where you collaboratively link theory to social change and to practice to drive social change. Then we have what we term as the phenomenological research, where researchers investigate a phenomenon or event by interpreting the participant lived experiences. And this is one of the research that are normally done in social sciences. You go, you investigate them, and then you come and interpret what they told you or the interviews you had with them. Then we have narratives, where you tell stories to understand how participants make sense of their experiences. So it is done through stories. And with this, if you go into education and also the archaeologists and those who study culture and all of that, they do this a lot, narrative research a lot. But for us, we are more with the phenomenological research and then ethnographic research, right? And now there is a new wave that is coming on that is more into qualitative study, but it is done through online, which is an ethnography, but that is just a topic for another day. Now let's look at some of the methods of qualitative. We have observations. You record what you've seen ahead, and then based on the research you are doing, you put them down. We also have what we term as interviews, of which now that is one of the common practices or methods of collecting qualitative data. Okay, so you ask people questions in a one-on-one conversation, and then you record them, and then you come back to transcribe. We have focus group discussions where you ask questions and generate discussion among a group of people. We have surveys where you distribute questions with open-ended questions. We have secondary research. All of these are methods, all right? But one thing I want you to note as a researcher is that although you are using instruments or methods to get your qualitative data, but however, these instruments, you should consider yourself as part of them, because after you collect it, you are the one that is going to write, through your own understanding and through your personal lens, the interpretation, the analysis, the observations that you are going to write, you are going to do it through your own personal lens. So you yourself, you are part and parcel of the method you are using. Okay, so you might have used observation, you might have used interviews, but however, you should consider yourself as a part of the instrument, because for instance, with the interview, you are the one asking the questions, and then you can even lead the researcher on if you want to have the participants on if you want to have more and valuable information. All right, so what you can do is that you should consider yourself as an instrument. Okay, again, let's look at some of the qualitative data analysis we have. We have a content analysis. And with content analysis, as a researcher, you would want to describe and categorize common words or phrases in qualitative data, all right? That is normally also one of the common ways of analyzing qualitative data. We have textual data where you examine the content and structure of text, okay? This is normally used by even companies and network companies to see to how they analyze some or make meaning out of big data. All right. Now, content analysis and textual analysis are used to make meaning out of the lot of data that organizations have. And in research too, we use this. We have discourse data where you study the communication and the language of people and then its effect in specific context. Now, the one that we're going to dwell on today is the thematic analysis, where you identify, patterns in the qualitative data you've gathered, and then you interpret these data, these patterns in themes. All right. So you identify the patterns, you put them in themes, and then you discuss it. And this is one of the common ways of analyzing qualitative data. And I believe that a lot of you who are doing qualitative studies have heard of thematic analysis and the qualitative data analysis. Myself, I have used the thematic analysis as well. Now, what are some of the steps that you should go through when you are doing qualitative analysis? And this is the time that I want you to pay much attention to whatever we're going to do here. Okay, so you should understand these steps. When you understand these clear-cut steps, it will guide your way into knowing what to do and what to expect at the end of the day when you collect your data. Now, so for instance, you've gone out there, you've done numerous interviews, okay? You've spoken to some managers, especially with the hospitality industry. You will speak to hotel managers, you speak to guests as well, and then you have collected a whole number of data because it's not easy. Qualitative interview, you might have gone to 20 minutes, 30 minutes interview, and then you are supposed to come back and transcribe your data. And now it's better than the early days where they didn't have any speech to text transcription. Okay, now we have tools that like AmberScript, like Google speech to text and all of that, that can help you to bring your audio data into text. Okay, so once you've done that, you've collected that voluminous audio and you want to make it into the text. After you've transcribed it, what you need to do is the first step that you prepare and organize the data. Now with this, you read the interview transcript to understand the meaning of the information that they have given you, all right? Because sometimes when you're doing the interview, you go by questions, okay? But you don't know entirely the answers that you are going in for, because it's the intentions, or let me say, these are responses given by people, all right? So before you even start with the analysis, you need to read, understand the data that you've gone to collect, all right? Because it's going to help you for the coding and everything. So you need to read, understand the data. Now, after you've read and understood the data, and then you've well organized them in maybe Excel, or when you are using a Vivo, whatever, you then have to review and explore the data for codes. Here, this is where you start to identify multiple significant statements from the participant opinions or repeated ideas that emerge, all right? So now you ask questions. For instance, what are the reasons that contribute to the low adoption of, let's say, technology at hotels, all right? So maybe this is the research question. Now, people might talk about cost issues, all right? They can talk about installation issues. They can talk about the traditional ways of doing things, their guests not having the interest in these technologies. So these are different kinds of information that you have been given. Now it is time for you to look at it and see how these statements can be blended together to form themes and what have you, and if they are repeated ideas. For instance, one will say, you might interview one and then the response would be high cost of installation. That's one of the reasons why it's not going into technologies, all right? The next person would also say high cost of the technology itself. That is why he's not going into technologies, all right? So these things are all cost, but they are different types of cost. So this is the cost of the technology itself and the cost of fixing the technology. So these are two different types of cost. So you might want to look at whether they are repeated ideas and whether you can join them together. That's how the theming and the coding start. So here, after you have looked at it and explored the repeated ideas that emerge, you develop and assign codes, all right? So now that you know, okay, I'll assign code of high cost to these ideas that are repeating itself. I will assign, if there are also other things like guest preferences, then you code them, maybe guest preferences, then you assign the codes under their statement under that particular code. I believe you have done NVivo already. Prof. Kandapan told me, so I'm not going to bore you with how to assign codes, but the next step is to develop and assign codes. Then once the codes are done, you then look out for the themes that you are, the codes that you have done, you extract themes from them, because you see that one of them are following a particular line. This is where theory comes in. If you have read a theory and you have the background about what to expect, it will help you to categorize them under the themes, okay? So that you know that, okay, this is going into, let's say, organization factors. This is going to maybe technological factors. It is going to maybe external factors or political factors and all of that. It is when you have read abroad, that is why you'll be able to categorize these themes under some sections, all right? So it helps you to also organize and discuss the themes as well. That's the last step. Once you have your themes, then you organize and then you begin with your discussion, okay? So now let's look at, so I listed some steps here if you are using NVivo so that we refresh our minds on the NVivo Pro software. This is one of the notable, there are other tools that you can use for qualitative analysis, but I prefer to use the NVivo. The reason is that NVivo allows you to, once you have the lot of data and then you have put them in Excel, and then you extract, or you export it to NVivo, you can play with the data. Let me put it that way. You can have where you have your classifications, your attributes, and your cases, and then they can stand alone for you, and then you can clearly understand your data. Okay? So we won't go much into NVivo, but I'll just refresh your mind on how you can use NVivo for analysis. For NVivo, we have classifications, attributes, and then cases. All right. The classification represents the people and the identities. Qualitative study, if you want to ensure validity of your responses, you need to use naming. You don't have to use their names. All right. But you give them some pseudonyms. All right. For instance, if your study is about, let's say, tourism education, and then you've done a lot of interviews, you can do TE1 for participant 1, or TE2 for participant 2, TE3 for participant 3, all right? So that you do not assign, you ensure anonymity of your responses. Anonymity is key issue when it comes to qualitative research. So you want to hide the identity, and then you need to. So once you do this, NVivo can help you to classify them based on the, let's say, for instance, the example that I used, TE1, TE2, TE3. They represent the participant and the identity, all right? Again, in NVivo, we have what we call the attributes, okay? Attributes represent close-ended questions, and then the responses of the participant. You see, these are like the background characteristics of your, what do you call it, of your respondent, your participant, okay? Their gender, their job position, their work experience. If somehow you might even want to go into their age, it's fine, all right? So the attributes are the close-ended questions that you have. Then it will come, now you are coming to the cases, the ones that you are going to use for your thematic analysis. This represents the open-ended questions and answers from the participants. So for example, if you ask them, what are the reasons for the low adoption rate of technologies in hotels? That question represents cases, all right? And it is better for you to use your research questions as your cases so that you can better analyze your data, all right? So if what are the reasons for low adoption rate is one of your research questions, just use them as the case, all right? So that you can assign nodes to the particular cases, all right? So after the attributes are done and compile the interviews, a data exploration can be used. You can use the explore functions to do project maps and all of that to assess the relationship between the information you got about your attributes, all right? So your next one is to do the coding, all right? But before you derive the codes, as I said, you should use your research questions as anchor codes, okay? Then the relevant code found in the cases are coded under them. So what are the reasons for this will be your anchor codes or your master codes. Then the codes that you identify, maybe cost, guest preferences, old ways of doing things, and all of that can be attached to these anchor codes, all right? So after you've done the coding, the next step is to do your sorting and categorization to obtain the themes that was addressed in the research questions. So now you have a lot of codes, but now you would want to turn them into themes, like let's say cost of installation, cost of this, cost of that. So that is when you do the sorting and categorization of your themes, of your codes into themes. After you have done that, you would want to know, you would want to pay attention to this. It's very important. You should think about whether putting some of the codes together as a parent theme or as a standalone theme. So for instance, the cost of installation and the cost of the technology can be put as high cost of technologies, all right? So that will be the parent theme, high cost of technologies. But when you are explaining them, you can separate them and say cost of installation, cost of fixing, cost of the technology itself, and other cost, everything you find under the cost can be placed under the parent theme, high cost of technologies. Then it can help you to explain. Because sometimes if you send papers, the reviewers are looking out for why not join this to make a parent theme? Because they are all talking about cost, all right? For instance, if they are all talking about value, why not join them to talk about it? Because maybe you might have different terms of value, like functional value and all of that, okay? They would want you to put them together under a parent team. Then when you are discussing them, you can segregate them from the other, all right? So you want to look into that if some of your responses can be parent teams, you can address them as such. So after you generate your team, the next important thing before the discussion is that you need to do your summary table. A lot of researchers do not do summary table, which is very bad, okay? Although a qualitative study is not supposed to be like a quantitative study, but however, you need to do your summary table, because the summary table, I'll show you an example of a summary table very soon. This is an example of a summary table. With the summary table, you look into the team itself, the category under the team, the number of cases you have under the team. So for instance, with this, there is high cost of technologies. And then under them, it fell under, I had, based on the technology organization environment theory, I categorized based on that. So that particular factor fall under the technology rated, okay? Then 6 cases. Then you give the explanation to that particular theme. Then you give evidences of the cases. So what the quotations, all right? So these are how to go about with your summary table, okay? You give the number, the theme, the category under which the theme is placed, the number of cases you found, the explanation of the theme, and this, okay? So this is a simple summary table of all the results you've gathered. It's very important you do that, because once you have this, you can go ahead with the discussion, because this is like the entire discussion in a table. You have explanation of your team, the categorization of your team, the number of cases you found under that particular team, all right? So you would want to take note of this. The summary table is very important, all right? So now let's go to it. So after that summary table, you can go ahead with your discussion, okay? There's this very important thing I want to touch on before moving on to the next thing. A lot of people go into their qualitative research, they gather the data and they start doing the work. Theory is very important in explaining your theme, okay? The reason is that theory helps you to get a strong basis for your study, all right? It can be the resource-based view theory. It can be the technology adoption model or theory. It can be social cognitive theory. It can be theory of reason action, theory of planned behavior. These are a few theories I can remember and I want to share with you. Once you have this theory, it helps you to get a foundation of what to expect, okay, about the nature and phenomenon of your study. So if you are looking at, let's say, behavior study, and then you are looking at theory of planned behavior, you would realize that these are the things that after the study you might expect. And then once you get the data, you would know how to, it even guides you on how to do your themes and also how to categorize them. So for instance, with my work here, as you can see, it was based on technological factors, organizational factors, and environment factors, which is based on the TOE framework by Tonaski and Fletcher, all right? So you would want to pay attention to theory. It is very, very important. Now, let's come to the main issue, results and discussion section, which is the chapter 4. I have some key issues to share with you here. Now, you've gathered your data, you've written your first chapter, the background section. You have also written your literature review. You have also written your methodology. Now, the discussion, the results and discussion. For me, I think qualitative researchers need to move away from what the quantitative do, because what the quantitative researchers do is that they run the analysis, report the analysis, and they have a different discussion session, okay? But because with qualitative, you are doing with tests and not numbers, and you are trying to tell lived experiences of your participant, You are trying to tell about their opinions and also their intentions. I believe that you should include them with the data you have accrued. Okay, so once you are talking about what they said, you can include the explanation of the particular thing that you have gotten, and also you attach the meaning of the theme. Okay, so I believe you don't have to segregate it when it comes to purely thematic analysis, where you are trying to talk about some themes of and also live experiences of your participant. Okay, so you would want to blend all of them, not separate them like result is here, discussion is here. No, results, you are telling a story, so you are trying to tell the experiences. So once you pick a theme, you explain that with supporting literature. Okay, so the first thing under here is that once you're writing the results and discussion, let's say chapter 4, results and discussion, the first thing is bring introduction. Okay, the introduction is going to talk about the main objective, some of the research questions you asked during the interview, and the method of inquiry. Did you use interviews? Did you use observation and all of that with qualitative research? Once in the introduction section, you need to provide this information, right? Then you describe in details the analysis process for transparency and credibility issues. You need to discuss it. Talk about, if you use NVivo, talk about what I talked about, the individual based sorting. Talk about the nitty-gritties, all the things that you use in the analysis process, you need to highlight them. Now you need to talk about the characteristics of your participant, which is very important, all right? Of which in the NVivo, the attributes and that you identify there would help you to do that. So the gender, for instance, the gender, the job position, and hotel brand and all of that. For this is one example of your participant ID. You should provide this table. It's very, very important. Okay. You have to give them the pseudonyms that you have given them, HR, for instance, in this situation, HR1, HR2, then their job position, all right, whether they are general manager, resident manager, and whatever you provide. Then you give the agenda. And also, because this study was about hotels, you give the brand, whether it's an international brand or a local brand. These are, characteristics that you can give to explain or to talk about your participant. Then you derive your summary table, then you begin your discussion. So these are the key things to note when you're about to write a results and discussion session. Okay, all right. One thing I also want to highlight is that during the discussion, when you're writing, make use of the observations. Okay, for instance, once you went there and you're interviewing that general manager, there are some comments that he would actually stress on. Okay, so when you stress on that, for instance, he was like, what are some of the reasons for low rate of adoption? Then the general manager will say, oh, it's the cost. Okay, once he says that, during the discussion, you can include them. Like you would say, HR1, who is a general manager of international hotel, strongly affirmed that cost is an issue. Okay, so you include this in your writing so that it will make your writing very interesting. So he strongly affirmed, or he made an exciting statement. All right, you can include all these things when you are writing your discussion section. Okay, so this is an example of characteristics, participant characteristics table. And also you can use with NVivo, you can use the project map to see the relationship between your participant. Okay, so for instance, with this, I was looking at the participants, I was looking at their brand, I was looking at their star rating, I was looking at their working experience. All right, so you can see that HR9, HR10, HR11 had working experience over 5 years, and HR9 worked in a 5-star hotel, and he's also from the international brand. So you use this project map that you generate from NVivo to explain your, your participant characteristics, right? So you can either use this one or use the participant table, right? Depends on you what you want to use, either this one or the characteristics table, okay? Then I've shown you the summary table. You do a good summary table with this one, okay? Also, you can make use of figures, okay? This is a figure I generated myself, all right? You can use now, there are a lot of tools online that you can use to generate figures, okay? So you use this to generate figures, all right, for yourself. Now, let's move on. So with this, this is telling you about the fact measures that enhance technology adoption. So you can see that education, technology training centers, customers' preferences, assurance of value, government support, technology cost reduction, So we generated a figure for this, and it is basically a summary of the results, right? So instead of maybe using the table to sometimes you want to play with figures, because it's qualitative study, not too much of numbers, but you can use figures to tell a story. All right. So for instance, those who are using narratives to write something, you can use this to tell a story. Right. Okay. So the next, let's move on. So now with the discussion section, how do you write it? You have done your summary table, you know the theme, you know the explanation of the theme, you have your evidences or the quotations from your interviews. These are some of the approaches that I use that I think it is also going to help you with your write-up. I want to do this real quick and then I will end here. Now, all right. So the first approach here is that you would want to use theme, explanation, evidence, and then your supporting literature. It's very important. You cannot discuss in your analysis without supporting it with the literature. So if you can see here, let me read this real quickly here. Another reason for the low adoption rate by hotels is the risk associated with the use of new and unfamiliar technology. So this is my theme, all right? I have stated the theme. Now, the next one is that I have to explain the theme, okay? So some managers consider new technologies that they are not familiar with as very risky, and therefore they need time to study it. So now I'm explaining the theme, okay? The next one is to provide the evidence, all right? So participant HR4, HR8, and 11 said this. So one of them said, when it comes to new things, it's also a matter of risk. A big risk is the biggest factor so far. Another one also said, mostly these technologies we have now are still in the data phase and it's not stable. And then it is still developing to be more reliable. So it's very risky. Another person also said that these things are new and you need to study on them. So all of them were talking about the risk issues. Okay. So I use the theme first, the explanation come, the evidence come, then I support it with literature. So with the literature, I said that this is in line with findings by Chan et al. And also Ling et al. 2015. Here, they talked about factors influencing adoption and they highlighted risk. So for instance, Chan et al. Said that managers appear to be reluctant to adopt a new technology because it is risky. So then this is it. So the first approach is the theme first, the explanation, the evidence, and then your supporting literature. Okay. The next one is, the next approach you can also use is that you bring the explanation first, then it will fall on your theme, then you give an evidence or the quotation, then your supporting literature. So for here, it was the high cost of technology. I started by saying majority agree that there's high cost of associated with technology, right? This can be attributed to fixing or installation and maintenance of these technologies. And it serves as one of the reasons for the low rate of adoption. So now I've spoken about explanation and the theme. The evidence was that according to each participant HR2, they said that these systems may cost you like 100,000 or so, and then it is not easy to afford it. Okay. Then I've given you the evidence or the quotation from the interview. Then you come on to the supporting literature. Okay. So your finding can whether support or disconfirm some literature. So this finding corroborates with other findings from other similar studies conducted on hotels. And I've given the references. All right. So you can use the second approach by saying, first explaining your theme, then giving the evidence, then the supporting literature. The next one is you use your evidence, your team, then you explain, and you give the supporting literature. All right. So the first you give the evidence. Like in this one, a lot of hotels are not aware. They are not well educated on the usage or even the benefit of these systems. Okay, this was said by participant HR6, who is a local manager of a local 4-star hotel. All right. Then I also give another evidence or another quotation from someone. Then I came on to talk about the theme. So this formed part of the reasons why technology is not adopted. All right, the inadequate education and awareness of these technologies. And after explaining that, I brought my supporting literature. This reflects the limit. This finding confirms results from previous studies on adoption of technology at hotels by Chan et al. 2020, Koshik et al. 2015, Okumos et al. 2017, Reno et al. 2014. Then I also gave some of the things they said. All right. So this is also the third approach. Evidence, you talk about a team, you explain your team and the supporting literature. Now, the last one is using the supporting literature, then you talk about a team, you explain, and you give evidence. Okay. So this is one example. The theme was hotel guest preference for human services, right? The guest preference for human services. So Liu et al. Remarked that the basic function of hotels is to serve guests, and this purpose should not be overwhelmed by technology. People-oriented services can hardly be offered without employee involvement. All right. According to some, so now I've spoken about the supporting literature. I'm now coming to talk about the team. So according to some of the interviewed hotel managers, one of the reasons were guest preference for human services. This proved that there seems to be an increasing, then the explanation is coming. There seems to be an increasing preference for human services by management, since this ensures high level of personalization of their guests, right? They are of the view that as a result of the service component that is associated with hospitality, not everyone wants to use technology, all right? So guests still prefer to engage directly with hotel staff to feel assured, right? Participant HR3 said this. So here, I use the supporting literature, I use the team, I use the explanation, and then ended with my evidence, okay? The supporting literature, team, explanation, and the evidence. So this is also another way of writing your discussion session, okay? So you use the supporting, the first one was the team, you explain, you use your evidence, then you give the literature. The second approach was you explain the team, you state the team, you give evidence, and then your supporting literature. The last one was the evidence come first, you state your team, you explain the team, and then you give a supporting literature. Then the last one, the supporting literature comes first, it comes to explain the team, then you give your evidence. So these are ways so that your work will not be one way, all right? It will not be that like you take one approach, you should blend them to make your writing, very interesting. As I said, with qualitative research, you are trying to portray something, you are talking about something. It's not only about the numbers. You are trying to put out people's lived experiences, people's intentions, people's way of life. So you need to make the writing very, you blend all styles that you can use. You shouldn't only be sought to just one way of writing. Okay. So now, as I end here, interesting things to note. You should approach the approaches to the qualitative research, whether phenomenological research, whether ethnography, whether narratives and everything, you should highlight it. Okay. And the method of collecting data, whether you are using the survey way where you give them questions with open-ended questions, or interviews or observations, you need to highlight that. Also, you need to highlight how you analyze the qualitative data. Okay, is it with are you going to use thematic analysis, content analysis, text analysis? I've already highlighted them. Then when it comes to the coding, you pay attention to words that are very similar. Okay, you need to pay attention to them. Once you group them, then you can derive themes from it. And don't forget what I told you about theory. Theory is very important. All right, you need to include have a basis. All right, It can be these grandfather theories like the resource-based value theory. It can be technology adoption model. It can be expectancy disconfirmation theory. But there are a lot of theories that can help you with your work, all right? Don't just write with and say that, okay, I'm doing grounded theory, so there's no theory there, and then I'm trying to come out with a new theory. Although you are coming out with a new theory, if you search well, you can find other theory somewhere that can help you and serve as a basis for your work, all right? That means if you say there's no theory for your work, that means you have not, one of my professors would tell me you are not reading enough, all right? Because each and every day, people are publishing, people are writing. So you find some theory somewhere that can help support your work, okay? Then you do one thing to notice your summary tables and your figures, all right? Once you have your summary table, you can begin with your discussion, all right? And then the various approaches to the discussion that I've taught you is also things to note. So to conclude, I conclude with a question. I believe that now things are open for you. You now have a clear understanding as to how you're going to write your qualitative research, and I hope that I've been able to be of help to you. All right, so thank you very much for your time, and also get in touch. These are my handles. This is my email, and I'm Benjamin Appel. Say once again, thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Rupam, and thank you, Prof. Kandapat.
Thank you so much, Dr. Benjamin. It has been excellent the way you have shared, and the ways I think it is very step-by-step process that you have described. I am sure that all the student has got some help out of it. So thank you once again for sharing. So far, we have 2 questions, but there'll be 1 question from my side as well, because I'm also curious about one part. Okay, so let's go to the first question. One question is from Yan Zonmua. Good afternoon, Dr. Benjamin. When is the best timing to translate the interview language into English? I believe that the student is trying to ask, like, if the interview been conducted in different language, what would be the best timing to translate the interview into English, or maybe what is the best time to start the translation? Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I think if the language is different from English, you need to get a translator, of course, all right? And once you get a translator, if the translator can do it, even when you're done with the interview, you can go ahead. Because the idea is that by the time you're going for interviews, you might have gotten a clear research questions, okay? And it is, the research questions should be in line with your objectives that at the end of the day you want to get, all right? So by the time you're going to the field, if these things are clear, if your research questions are in line with your research objectives and what you want to achieve at the end of the day, start doing the transcription, because it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time, especially if you have about 30 minutes interview or 1 hour. Hey, you don't want to waste my time. Because I remember during mine, let me use mine as an example. You might not get, for instance, if you are not doing focus group discussion and you are doing different people, you might not get them at the same time, okay? One will schedule a meeting with you for about a week. Another will schedule a meeting with you about 1 month, you know? So once you get the data, because you want to graduate on time and you don't want to waste time, go ahead with the transcription, because transcription is one of the time, it's going to waste much of your time. With qualitative data, the only challenge here is the transcription time. And, you know, well, once you've done the transcription, reading through it and then getting your team should be easy. So go ahead with it once it's in conformity to your research. That's what I would suggest.
Excellent, that's great. So I hope the student got the answer already. Okay, I have another question from another student, Juan Jan. Thanks for sharing, Dr. Benjamin. I would like to know that how you find your targets, I mean specific respondents, and then get in touch with them and the interview with them in a smooth way. Could you share some experience regarding these issues, please? Thanks so much. Sure. if you'd
All
like
right.
to highlight.
Yes. Thank you for the question also. For me, I was privileged, okay, because, Prof. Nithya, our executive dean, he has a lot of connections, So Prof. Nithya helped me a lot. He linked me to some of the managers, and then I had a chance. Some of them, I met them in person during the hotel, you did a hotel industry networking program. I remember in
Yes.
2019, yes. So I had the chance to meet some of these managers, and then some of the interviews were done because at that time I was ready with my questions. So I remember I went to do a presentation, and right after I was chasing them, with my interviews. Okay, so I had a chance for the supervisor had this network, so I built on the network. So you might also want to use network of others. It's very important because sometimes I was coming from a different culture background and I didn't know anybody there. So I built on the network of others. Okay, so you might want to also build a network of others to get them because it's not easy. Some of them are very busy now that after pandemic, it's not easy getting them because they are busy trying to make money and everything. But once you go, maybe you go with the name of, oh, Dr. Rupam said I should come and meet you for this. Oh, you'd be like, oh, Dr. Rupam is my friend. That's fine. Okay, so build on a network of others if you are in a very new environment and you don't know people. Okay, so
absolutely. I totally agree. And for the students as well, please use your supervisors network. You use your people, come and join this kind of seminar session so that you can build your network, because building the network is very, very important for a PhD research student. It helps to get a job as well. It helps you to get a lot of connections and so on. Yeah. So I'll move on to the next question is from Lin Wu. Dear Dr. Benjamin, some people said that qualitative research required only three chapter, and conceptual framework and data analysis is not important. However, I saw that you invest very much time in and effort in data collection and coding. Could you explain your approach? I think it's a bit, yeah. Maybe you can give
yes,
some
I think
highlight.
maybe we might also want to organize a different section for coding and all of that. Yes, but I think Prof. Kandapan told me that you've done Envivo, how to use it for coding.
Yes.
Or maybe later on you can get in touch and then we'll see how best. But yes, with qualitative study, stop thinking about conceptual framework and all of that. But you should think about research framework. Research framework is different from the conceptual framework. Conceptual framework are more done based on the theory aspect, what they've done, and then you are going to test them. All right. But you might have a research framework as to how you want to go about it. All right. So with this, the approach might be okay, using thematic analysis. So if it's with thematic analysis, how am I going to do my coding? How am I going to do my sorting? How am I going to group them under themes and all of that? Okay. So start thinking about that. Because if you're going to use interviews, then it's better you start looking into how to use whether thematic analysis or content analysis. All of them, the procedures are the same, right? It's just making meaning of the lot of data you have collected. Okay, so this is also for another section, and Vivo can help you do that a lot. We also have traditional ways of using Excel to do content analysis, okay, where you pick on similar cases and then you put them as one team and then you're good to go. All right, so maybe you want to revisit your Envivo again. Yes, all right. For me, you said I should explain my approach. I use Envivo. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Benjamin. One more question from Zindan. Doctor, what kind of theory could be a theory or so-called the parent theories? For example, sustainable development theory, a theory of things. I mean, what I can understood from the question is, do you follow a certain theory or a parent theory to form your whole research?
Okay. Yes. As I was saying earlier, the theory is important because it guides you, okay, as to have a basis. Because you might even use it in your literature review, okay? And sometimes people think that theory should be the old theories. We are doing research. Dr. Rupam research have theories. He might have come out with a new concept. a theory you can apply. It's not every day that we have to go back to the as old as the Maslow's theory or hierarchy. No, even we should be making use of the current studies, because that is what is maybe Maslow's theory was done years ago, and people have changed. There are factors that have contributed to changes now currently, of which maybe Dr. Rupam has done a study and found those factors. So that becomes your underpinning theory for your research now. All right. So don't only think about these old theories like the social cognitive theory, but fine, they are good. All right. But someone has maybe revised the social cognitive theory and included new factors. All right. And maybe has tested it as quantitative. Now you can use it, look at it, and see whether there might be similarities with the qualitative. That is research. All right. Research, the confirmation of results, confirmation of results, replication of theory, it's all about research. So don't only think about the old theories. Each and every day, people are writing papers and then suggesting theories and all of that. So you can take that as well. Okay, they form part of your theory.
Excellent. Thank you so much. As I said, I have one question from my side. You have done an extensive research, and I would like to ask you your viewpoint from let's say a student perspective, that when you found out there are so much of opinions from all these interviews, and you found something in the literature which might be a bit different, how do you interpret in your conclusion the outcome, what you have from your interviews and what you have found out in the literature? Because that's where we always ask this question, so what? Yes, so how did you
what? I think sometimes when you find different theory, different results from what is in the theory, for me, I think that is even research. All right, because we shouldn't be expecting the same thing the same time, because things change. We say we are now the new generation, everything is changing. Okay, so once you find it like that, and some reviewers don't like that, because it seems some of them are the old papas, and then it seems you are challenging them. But in a nice way, maybe once you disconfirm them at the conclusion side, I think when you're writing, you should bring your limitations. And you highlight that this is a study that was done in this particular time. And so at this point, within this particular context, all right, within this particular space. And so it might be considered in this space alone. And then that is a limitation. But if you don't do that and you generalize it to different contexts, they will be like, okay, you have this, you are there disconfirming theories, and you are here talking about, you just did a cross-sectional study. Okay, it was just for a particular period of time. So you need to highlight your limitations when you have results disconfirming other particular results, because the reason might be that in their context, it works, all right? But in your context, it is not working. So you need to highlight that, okay, what are the factors contributing to your results that are not in line with the previous results? It might be your respondents, it might be the context that you are looking at, and all of that, okay? So you need to highlight that in the conclusion that, okay, some of these results are disconfirming the existing theories, but these are the things that I found, and it was done in this context, and it's a cross-sectional study where I took data. It's not a longitudinal study where I studied them for a long time, but it's just done in a spatial-temporal moment.
Thank you so much. I think you have answered it very excellently. So with that, I would like to thank you so much on behalf of School of Hospitality, Tourism and Events for coming up and joining and sharing your entire research journey with our new students as well as ongoing student, and also behalf of our research center, CRIT. So I am sure the students will get connected through your social media page, LinkedIn, ResearchGate, and so on. And definitely, I will ask all of you to maybe open up your camera to have a group picture. So that'd be great. Okay.
Okay.